Good evening. Welcome to the May 5th, 2020 special call meeting of the Shawnee City Council and Park and Recreation Advisory Board. I am Mayor Michelle Dissler. I'll be chairing this meeting. All members of the governing body and the Park and Recreation Advisory Board are participating remotely. I will do a roll call for the City Council members at this time. Councilmember Thomas. She's showing present. For some reason, I can't hear her.
Here we go. I was just unmuted. Somebody had us all on mute. Here, present.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Zimmerman. I can see that he's present.
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Here we go. I was just unmuted. Somebody had us all on mute. Here, present.
Thank you.
Present.
Is it on? Can I talk?
Councilmember Kemling.
Present.
Councilmember Larson Bonnell. I see her hands up. She's present. Councilmember Nappen.
Present.
Councilmember Constance.
Present.
Councilmember Chowfie.
Present.
Next, I will ask Peter Jarko, Chair of the Park and Recreation Advisory Board, to do a roll call for his members.
Board Member Bailey.
Present.
Board Member Bolin.
Present.
Board Member Kopp.
Present.
Board Member Green.
Present.
Board Member Riggs. Board Member Schieber.
Present.
Board Member Sawyer.
I can see that she's present. Okay, thank you.
Present.
Thank you. Because tonight's meeting is a special call, the City Council and Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members will only be able to
Board Member
discuss
Schieber.
on the agenda.
Board Member Sawyer.
Also, our regular council committee meeting is scheduled to begin at Zoom at 7 p.m. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some ground rules. In order for our transcriptionist to be able to produce verbatim minutes, please also state your name when you speak. Next, I'd like to go over some emergency procedures. Due to the COVID-19 situation, we're taking action to minimize attendance at our meetings. We're asking our residents to stay home, especially if attendance is not essential, and listen to the broadcast of the meeting from our website at cityofshawnee.org. All governing meetings will comply with the Kansas Open Meetings Act. During this time of health emergency, we will not be accepting public comments on agenda items for this emergency period. We will have a limited amount of public seating where the audience can observe and listen to the meeting. However, we are using social distancing best practices. Additionally, I will state council members' names who vote in minority of a motion, so our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of that vote. The only item on the agenda is to discuss the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Imagine Shawnee Strategic Vision. On April 22nd, 2019, the governing body authorized a contract for a Parks and Recreation Master Plan and Strategic Visioning and Planning process. We will have two presentations this evening. The first presentation will be Barbara Heller with Barry Dunn. She will present the final Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The second presentation will be from Mike Mowry with Strategic Government Resources. He will present the final Imagine Shawnee Strategic Vision. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. We have a presentation for you, and I first wanted to introduce the rest of the team. We have Danny Wilson, also of Barry Dunn, Kelly Van Elders from Stantec, and Josh Cheek from Stantec. And thanks to Tanya, Neal, and Caitlin for all their help on our project. So with that, we'll go through an agenda. which is the next slide, we want to talk a little bit about the connection to Imagine Shawnee. We'll go through the master plan process, and I don't have the ability to advance slides. So I need a slide advanced. Yeah, so connection to Imagine Shawnee, we worked with the city and Mike and Caitlin and Nolan to make sure that each plan informed the other. We'll go over a little bit about the master plan process, plan organization, mission, vision, guiding principles, executive summary, and then the real meat of the presentation are in two parts. One, key park recommendations and a park discussion, and key recreation recommendations. And just a note about what a park and recreation master plan is, when you compare it to Imagine Shawnee and the city strategic plan, that's a much more macro strategic effort, whereas the park and recreation master plan is much more granular and just really focused on parks and recreation. So next slide. Yeah, we're going to go over the process, and the next slide has just, we wanted to keep the city strategic plan, Imagine Shawnee, at top of mind. And some of the words in here you can see really relate to the park and recreation side of the business, from safe, sustainable, inclusive, interactive, designing an environment where businesses thrive, the maximizing and integrating natural resources. And then this is all an effort in making sure that there are exceptional city services and infrastructure. So next slide shows what our process was. We had a 5-phase process, which is the next slide. And I'll go through each of these individually, but it went from just learning more about the community engagement, which is also another mechanism to learn about Shawnee. And we did a lot of variety of methods to gain some input from residents, from city council, from park board, et cetera. And then analysis, looking at the park and recreation as a system. And then we had a series of visioning meetings in which what were the key themes that evolved through the process. And then the last part is just putting together the draft and final plan, which includes a comprehensive set of recommendations. And so the master plan document is organized by chapter following these phases. So next slide, the first process, discovery. So just project initiation, we did a large series of meetings with staff, did a meeting with the advisory board, and then we had a steering committee that was also instrumental in helping shape this plan. And then we also want to take a look at demographics to see what happens with demographics and how that should influence how we position park and recreation services in the future. And the second phase was all the engagement. So key leader meetings, so mayor and council members were included in that. We did a series of focus groups with seniors, with faith-based organizations. We did an open house and had it set up as stations, and people could walk around and participate in providing their thoughts to us. A steering committee meeting, advisory board meeting to gain perspectives from them about the future of the parks and recreation system. And then we also did a statistically valid survey. The next slide just details a little bit of the analysis. And as I said, this is really the major part of a park and recreation master plan. And two big areas there, just taking a look at all of the park assets and inventories, all of the park amenities. What are the amenities? And are they distributed well? Is there equity around the community? And then that leads into doing a level of service analysis, which looks at some national guidelines for what the right amount of amenities are, from park acreage to amenities such as ball fields, playgrounds, things like that. And then the last piece is just taking a look at the overall recreation services and all of the events that you folks do. And just a note that there's a Shawneetown 1929 strategic plan, and this doesn't replace any of that, but we use that plan, we reference that plan in terms of anything related to Shawneetown. So the next phase 4 was visioning, and that's where we developed some key findings, what the strategic recommendations are, and the recommendations are broken down into different time frames of short, medium, and long, and we'll get to that a little bit more later. And then visioning workshops, working with park board, steering committee, and staff, and just based on everything that we've seen, what are the recommendations that we need to put into place? And then also, as a part of that, we worked on mission, vision, guiding principles, and values. And I'll talk through those a little bit. So the next slide has just the draft and final plan, which is where we are right now. So as far as the first part of the plan, for those of you that don't want to read through a couple hundred pages of a document, there is an executive summary that is a capsule in time. And this is on the next 2 slides. The next slide just has, wait, go back. We missed a couple of slides here. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. So as I had mentioned, we have an executive summary, and the mission statement and the vision statement, what we liked about the mission statement was creating opportunities for the community to explore, engage, and connect. And what we did with all of the organizational and recreation recommendations was really key on those 3 words, and we developed recommendations around those 3 themes. And then vision statement, one thing that really resonated with all of the groups was just being innovative and inclusive and fulfilling each person's mind, body, and spirit. So it's not just about athletics, or it's not just about fitness. It's really, there's many mind events and spirit and body. So just really looking at what the department can offer holistically for the community. And guiding principles really are a way of describing how we want to focus services to our residents. And we worked with the steering committee and the park board to establish what they considered the most important guiding principles to be. And you can see that these have connections to the work that the strategic plan did, but just creating community, committing to service, focus on accessibility and equity, providing a quality of life, and then ensure environmental sustainability and open space. So what we did with this exercise was the steering committee and advisory committee both had a long list of possible guiding principles and then identified which ones they felt resonated to the top. And that's what these are. And so if you're a person that gets hired by the Parks and Recreation Department, you get a clear sense of the things that are really important with service delivery to the residents. And then, yeah, the executive summary, which I referenced earlier. And for those of you that want to do a quicker read of the entire plan, all of these elements are included, and we have summaries of each of these elements, so you get a really good feel for the entire document. And a lot of agencies will put the entire plan on their website, but then also put the executive summary. There might be some residents that will want to read the entire document, and there's others that will want to do a quick read. So we do that just as a way of making it an easy read for those that don't want to spend a lot of time reading through everything. And then just two highlights that we wanted to mention. One of the recommendations we have is to take a look at the Civic Center. And there were some identification of need for some additional indoor space. So one of the recommendations is to take a look at the Civic Center to expand its offerings from not only rental, but also a programming facility, which would include expansion of the footprint of the building, and then tying that all together with the library, and it just creates a really nice campus. And then another important highlight is the involvement of the department along with the city and the Valley of Champions endeavor, which is really an exciting project for the city as well as Johnson County. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Van Elders, who's going to go through the park recommendation. And after the park recommendation, we'll break for a couple of minutes and see if there's any questions that anyone would like to ask. So Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Barbara. First, I'll do a sound check. Barbara, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, all right. Well, thanks for setting a brisk pace. I'm going to continue with it as much as I can. Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you. The first thing I want to share with you is park inventory and analysis of parks, and then I'll share some highlights of some of the recommendations that came about from that process. This particular map shows basically how we broke down parks into 4 categories. You'll see the green squares, which are your regional parks, such as Stump Park would be an example. The cyan hexagons are your community parks. The pink circles are neighborhood parks, like Water Tower Park would be an example. And anything that's a black triangle are non-city properties that still provide recreational services to the community. So that could be, for example, schools or maybe Johnson County type facilities. Advance. So when we look at park evaluations, this is going to be the sample slide that is part of the front part of this section, and it'll explain all the different things that we looked at when we analyzed each park individually. You'll have the size of park, of course, is important, which relates to also the level of maintenance. The level of maintenance mode, we had 6 different modes. The highest level is number 1 on the level of maintenance mode. That means it takes the most manpower, mowing, irrigation, that sort of thing, all the way down to a category 6, which essentially category 6 is non-developed properties. Those are parks that are owned by the city but haven't been developed into a park yet. And then as far as our existing park evaluations, we broke it into various categories. We established a ranking scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being ranked the highest. We looked at things like the collection of amenities that each park has, the number of usage, which is really the intensity, the number of visitors to each park, and based on the activity as well. The condition of the facilities, individual facilities, whether it be a restroom or play structure, or even the park trails or grounds itself. Safety, both from a view, can you see into the park, as well as are the items such as playgrounds safe to play on. Accessibility is of course important. How do people get there via bike, pedestrian, vehicular, as well as our everything in ADA compliance for the facilities that you provide. And resiliency is something that we always want to look at for parks. It's the ability to recover both from environmental or social events. So if there's a high intense use, such as what happens with the barbecue event, for example, how quickly can a park recover from something like that? The next thing we want to show you is basically an example sheet. So this is Stump Park, and this is how that particular sheet is displayed. And this is how all of our parks will be illustrated in the report. It's a 60-acre park. It is a level maintenance mode of 2 because it does require quite a bit of mowing and irrigation and manpower to keep the park in shape that it is. And as far as park evaluations, I won't go through all of these, but as you can see, we've evaluated each of those. For example, I'll just pull one of these out, park usage. Obviously during the spring, summer, and fall, it's a high park usage for all the soccer games, baseball and softball games that it occurs. So it's a 10. There's only a couple of parks that ranked in 10. Old Shawneetown, of course, would be another example of park usage. Advance. Then the next thing that we looked at is we created a graphic that helps explain what inventory the park has. This is really a start for the number of soccer fields, for example, number of public restrooms and play structures. And you'll see how this translates in our next example. And then we had a list of recommendations, and this is something that's very important. It's probably one of the categories that Parks Department and the Parks Board will refer to the most, which is what are the priority things that we need to put in the CIP that would occur between 1 to 3 years. Priority 2 would be 4 to 6 years down the road, and priority 3 is 7 years and beyond. So we'll have a recommendation for each of those categories, and in some cases there may only be 2 categories or may only be 1, but this is how we broke out the recommendations as far as phasing goes. And then there's a dollar sign. Those symbols, as you can see, just sort of put a dollar value of today's dollars of what you would spend to make that particular recommendation come about. Advance, please. We'll show you an example here, again, for Stump Park. So you can see on the left, there's the inventory. For example, it shows the number of soccer fields. And this is just a nice quick reference guide. This is also broken down into a matrix at the end of the report that'll be in the appendix, and all of these totals will be in there as well. So just to highlight a couple recommendations, there's the need to replace some of the fences and backstops at this particular location. Another priority thing would be to develop a master plan for renovations that are needed that will come later in priority 2, phase 2. Play structure is dated and too small, for example. Small shelters, there's not enough room for teams or users to gather. And there needs to be really to compete with all the other facilities around in the region. We need to upgrade the restrooms, concession, maintenance, and storage building. Advance, please. And I just want to highlight a couple of the other recommendations throughout the report. Again, these are all outlined in each of the individual categories for each park. So just for example, research and plan for indoor programming space at the Civic Center. That's something that will occur in phase 2. So in the next 4 to 6 years, that'll be a study, a planning study. Expansion of areas at Erfurt Park for the next phase on the back half of the property. I'm going to skip down a little bit, a couple more to keep things rolling. Replace the backstop fencing and new restrooms for Swarner Park. Those are broken into 2 different phases. And again, that's to upgrade the fencing. Right now it's the old style short fencing. There's been a lot of incidents where balls have gone over the fence and struck people. So that's something that we want to correct really here in the near future. And then down the road, it's in need of a restroom upgrade. So that's why that one's in phase 2. Slide. Some more recommendations for you. One is to create a master plan vision for Sand and Gravel Park. And that would be was one of the undeveloped parks. We've got a couple of those on the west end of town. And so that would be high recommendations to come up with a master plan for that particular park. And then replacing maybe lawn with turf in the fenced areas at both aquatic centers. That's really in response to the potential new COVID recommendations for spacing people out. We're going to need more space for people to spread out if we want to admit more people into the aquatic center. So those are something that we'll be looking at here pretty soon. And then again, develop a master plan for Stump Park. That would be, again, to make some parking corrections, to make it a little more safe in that parking lot, as well as adding the restroom and upgrading some of the pedestrian circulation in that particular park. On the next slide, this is an interesting graphic because it really depicts the various size of parks. Each circle represents a different park. The colors refer back to the regional, community, neighborhood park matrix that we started out with. And what's really exciting about this is the two largest properties that the city has are your undeveloped parks, and those are the two river properties that are undeveloped. So it's exciting to know that even greater things are to come in the city for Shawnee as we look forward to developing those someday to really meet the needs of many people, not only in the city, but also in that entire region of Kansas City. So with that, we're going to open it up to see if there's any questions or comments about what Barbara and I have gone over so far.
Anyone on the council or Park and Recreation Advisory Board has any questions or comments? Councilmember Chaffee.
Hi, thank you so much. Could you clarify what, it was listed in the example for Stump Park, but what the MARC regional wayfinding system is? And I'm sorry if I missed that in the full document somewhere.
Sure, no problem. So MARC is the Metro Area Council that has come up with a plan for all communities in Kansas City. It's a list of recommendations. They have specific wayfinding, and this is specifically for destination locations, specific to parks. So for areas such as Stump that attracts a lot of soccer tournaments or baseball or softball, for example, they wanted to have a common wayfinding system so that as visitors come to Kansas City, this particular sign system would be uniform so that no matter where a visitor was in the city, they would start to see these uniform signs so that it could help, locate where amenities, for example, might be near a particular park. Does that help you?
It does, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Thomas.
Hi, this is just something that I noticed right at the very beginning. If you went back to the very first slide, I think, or maybe it's the second slide, this is titled, the presentation is titled as a city council meeting, when this reality is not a city council meeting. It's a joint meeting, and it's a council committee meeting. And if this is a official document that'll go into the archives, I think it's important to have it titled as what it is.
Councilmember Constance.
I just really wanted to thank our city staff for all of your work on this, and the Parks Board members who volunteer your time. This is a really thorough overview. I was also excited at the very beginning to hear you mention that you use those national guidelines. So you were really using a data-driven approach to figuring out what we need, but then also bringing in that resident feedback. I know a lot of work goes into this, and I'm just really thankful for the efforts because I know a lot of people are drawn to Shawnee because of our parks. So thank you for everything you did to make this possible.
Yeah, thanks so much. And yes, staff really helped us too, particularly Caitlin and Tanya and Neil. So we hats off to them as well. But thanks so much. That's very kind of you. Are we ready to move on? or are there any other questions?
All right, my system was having issues. It wouldn't allow me to unmute myself. Councilmember Nappen, and then I think Councilmember Thomas may have had her hand up again as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I just echo what's been said. Really good work here by the staff and the Parks Board as well. I had one process question, just being new to the council. Is this something is this a strategic plan that we haven't had before, or this is a 5-year plan, or can you give me some perspective around the process?
Yes, it's a 10-year plan. Generally these days, Park and Recreation master plans are anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And there's a certification program, Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies, that Shawnee is aspiring to become certified. This is one of the requirements for that as well. So, and then the other thing too, it's different than a strategic plan in that it really deals with the services as well as the physical assets, the bricks and mortar. So that's just a little background about the process.
So we haven't actually had a Parks and Rec master plan until
now. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Thomas, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I did. On the pools where you indicated that there was going to be some expense in expanding some of the areas around the pool, do we know, if you engage in a 6-foot distancing, or maybe it goes to 3 feet, I don't know what the future will hold, but what's the capacity of our large pool there by the library when you start thinking about how much expansion that is? What will that do to our capacity for that pool?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we haven't put the numbers together on that yet. That's something where we really need to dive into, since this is all fresh. When we started this study, this problem didn't even exist.
Right.
We are at the end of the study, and all of a sudden a new issue popped up. So we were cognizant enough to put that in the recommendation, that it's a step we need to take, because it's not just a short-term thing, but probably going to be something that is more long-term. So I wish I had the exact number to tell you at this moment, but that's sort of another deeper dive that needs to be done in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and that's a very good question. And when you think about it, park design in the future is going to be really different than it has been. A whole new set of parameters around how to provide services, both on a park design, facility design, and recreation programming. So it'll be something that the staff will certainly be cognizant of.
And just one other statement or question, really, I think it'd be helpful for me, where we are today, and then once it's decided what that capacity is where we are, the volume of resident versus non-resident memberships that are purchased to our pools.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good point too. And I'm sure there are a lot of communities that are going to be looking at that very thing, because you want to make sure your residents have the opportunity to be present at your facilities.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
You bet.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Yes, I just had a comment. First of all, I'm happy to have a plan. I think this was an issue when we were dealing with the community center controversy, and we didn't even have a master plan to show that we were kind of managing things in a forthright manner throughout the community. But one thing I'd like to do is where we're at now, I see where we're expected to come up with these recommendations tonight and move forward with this plan. And I do have some concerns about that, because I'm real big on the issue of public transparency and let people know where we're at. I know a lot of them participated, and now I'd like to enjoy the process of involving them in it by having this at a regular council meeting or a regular council committee meeting, where the presentation can be made and we can receive the comments from the folks there, and then move forward. Because I'm really hesitant to move forward with it, even though I like it, when we don't have that public input and we haven't shared it with them. You look at the planning cycles. I know the one on the strategic plan, for example, shows this the circular arrows going around, and it comes to the point where you get back to the public and give it to them and show them and receive their final input. And I think that's really an important part of the process, and we haven't really done that. So I'm going to be real hesitant to vote on recommending to move this forward, not because the plan's no good or I don't like it or anything like that, but because I want to take one more step. I want to bring it to a public hearing where we're not doing this on computers and Zoom and that kind of thing. And we can have some real participation by our citizens. So I'm going to have difficulty when we get that recommendation later on in this discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenkins. And then I'll recognize Councilmember Larson Bonnell and then Councilmember Kimling. But first, I do want to bring it to the attention. The city manager has notified me that we've lost the live feed. So it would probably be in the best interest to go ahead and continue with the presentations and the questions and comments. Everything is recording. We will be able to share that recording with the public and get public feedback. But at this point, it is probably best that we do not take a formal vote tonight since we have lost the feed. So we'll be doing that. So kind of a nod forward, like Mr. Jenkins said. He likes the plan. And I would just add too that I think staff has done an amazing job. They have put a ton of work into both this and the Imagineering session, strategic plan, strategic vision. While I attended every single event, I know that they were having a ton of work and meetings and other additional work in the background that I wasn't part of. I do want to thank them for their time, and I think the council should be very proud of themselves because the residents, and I feel for maybe the first time really in Shawnee's history with these plans has the residents been involved every single step of the way. There have been a multitude of focus groups and then regrouping and then regrouping again. And so I would say the resident input has been involved in every step of both of these processes. And so normally I would be pursuing our original item to vote to move this forward, but since we have lost the feed, I've been advised that we probably should not make a formal vote tonight, but we'll go ahead and continue the presentations and the comments and questions and then do the formal vote at a future meeting. And then Councilmember Larson Bonnell.
Thank you. This question is somewhat moot at this point, but I do want to clarify. It is my understanding that we are in a special city council meeting that is just like any regular city council meeting, just at a different time, and that our council committee meeting is a totally separate thing that will start at 7 o'clock today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so theoretically, this is just like any other meeting. I understand the reasons that we're not going to vote tonight, but I just wanted to clarify that for the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Lisa. Just even if you look at our calendars, it's referenced as a council committee meeting. I understand what you're saying, but I felt like it was it's a small detail, but I think it's important. And even our special call meeting, Joint Parks Advisory Board and Council Committee meeting is what it's called. So if we want to go with a council meeting, that's fine. That's just not how it's reflected here. But thanks for your addressing that.
So are there any other questions or comments in regards to the Shawnee Parks Master Plan? If not, we will move ahead with the—
Pardon me, Mayor. I believe there's more to this presentation.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have Danny Wilson who's going to go over the recreation and events assessment.
Hello, everyone. This is Danny. And we fooled you there. We had a little time for discussion about parks, and we'll jump into recreation, but it will not take that much time. I know we're trying to catch up a little bit here. So I will speak to the recreation assessment side of the master planning process. A lot of the master planning process is dedicated to those physical assets and the plan over the span of the next 10 years on what to do with them. We also take a look at a more comprehensive view of your programs and services that you offer to the community as well. And so as Barbara mentioned earlier, we go through several steps to really inform the assessment. So we look at your demographic data, and we take a look at not only what comprises your city now from a number of factors like age and race and level of income, but we look 5 years from now and into predictions of what will that look like in the future. We look at your current inventory of what programs you do provide or have provided to date, and then look at how many folks do participate in those different programs and what sort of revenue do those different programs generate. We overlay all that data into some different matrices to really try to hone in on how are the different program areas performing. And then we look at that data in comparison to what the community said. And earlier we talked about the community engagement process and looking at that hard data that came in through the statistically valid survey on what your community members are asking for. So when we start to pair all that information together and overlay it, it actually starts to form a vision and direction for the future of your programs and your services. And so that's what I will run through briefly tonight. The full report has all of the recommendations, but we have a few highlights for you on the next few slides. And so those recommendations were broken out into 3 core ideas that actually came from the department's mission. And so we align that, the recommendations with the mission. So explore, engage, and connect. So with that first area of recommendations, explore, we've picked out 4 different recommendations to highlight for you this evening. And the first one talks to the idea of ensuring funding for pipes and parks in the near future. Now, that is currently listed as a midterm objective that would kind of be a focal point for the next 4 to 6 years. And we've also, in addition to what's listed just here in front of you on the slide, the full recommendation also suggests that perhaps the Master Plan Steering Committee could be some great advocates for the future funding of pipes and parks and being able to involve them in the process. They've been a great addition to the process so far and invested in the future of parks and recreation. The second highlight is to develop an indoor recreation facility plan and researching that possibility of adding space to the current civic center. And we spoke of this earlier. It is in our programmatic recommendations simply to make sure we remember that there were needs and desires expressed, especially in all of our engagement processes, that we want to make sure that you continue to keep in mind. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes indoor space to make those things happen. So we have that recommendation number identified as explore number 2. Explore number 5 speaks to some data that we saw as far as your demographic data and actual current level of programming towards folks that are ages 55 years and older in your community. And our suggestion is to intentionally develop a more robust program menu that is geared towards folks that are over the age of 55. Now, traditionally, we have called this group seniors, and what we're seeing nationwide is that shift happens away from the senior label and actually creating 2 groups of older adult programming. One is active adults and one is senior programming. So right now, you've got some really great SunCom opportunities that are largely computer-based. And so our suggestion and recommendation is that we really focus on the younger active adults, that the interests and desires of that group are very different. And so we see that as an opportunity to expand your current programming offerings. The last recommendation that we want to highlight in this Explore section is what Barbara mentioned earlier, is achieving that Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies. That's what that CAPRA stands for, the accreditation. So we've absolutely full-heartedly support that initiative. It really shows that staff wants to ensure that they are doing the best possible job they can according to some nationally set standards. The next slide talks to the engage idea, it speaks to the engage idea. And so engage number 1 recommends that you assign a champion or a team of staff to champion the master plan's progress. And so what we mean by that is assigning out the different tasks over the course of the next several years to ensure that progress continues, that some deadlines are set, and you can see and report out on the progress of this plan moving forward. Recommendation number 3 speaks to the consideration of more intentional teen programming. And what we observed in the program levels now is teen programming tends to be a spillover category. It's a tough group to reach, we give you that. And so what we suggested in our conversations with staff and listed in the recommendations here is that you could consider a teen advisory group that could really drive that programmatic effort and really enable your staff to offer programs that are interesting to teens now. This group would have to be very nimble because, you know, as well as anyone, teen interests change on a dime. So we've got that initiative in here for you as a new opportunity. And then the engage number 4, to really review that engagement feedback through the survey and the open house and everything, that in all future programmatic decisions that you're using that engagement feedback. And you spoke before about making sure you are continuously engaging the community in the future of Parks and Recreation offerings. And this is absolutely solidifying that recommendation. And then in the next slide, what we have talked about in regards to the connect piece of the mission is that we suggest that you continue to strengthen your department's brand image. The marketing team had expressed an interest in really focusing on a branding plan and ensuring best practices in their marketing. And so we have listed that as recommendation connect number 2. Recommendation 3 under connect speaks to the idea of making sure that there is intentional outreach and inclusion of cultural groups in future program development. We see nationwide that demographics are shifting as far as race and ethnicity, and we want to make sure that in Shawnee, those shifts are going to happen too, and so that the needs recreationally for different groups are being met. And finally, in this section, we're highlighting number 7, where we suggest that you conduct a comprehensive assessment of that program guide that you got, which some of this has happened already. We want to make sure that you're focusing on that publication, that physical document that is held in high regard, by the way, in your community, that it's a customer-centric experience. So that from start to finish, those folks that are reading your document feel very well informed. They have all the information they need to make purchasing decisions. And there are calls to action to encourage participation. And so doing a comprehensive review of that should help reach more folks with that document and result in hopefully higher levels of participation as a result of that document. And finally, we've got some recommendations that are very program specific. And in the next slide, we describe 4 of them for you. The first one is recommendation number 3 under programs. And this one speaks to the reassessment of the dance program menu. Dance has been a very long-standing tradition with the programs that you do offer. And unfortunately, we've seen lower numbers, perhaps less revenue on a consistent basis. And so this is an opportunity to make that choice. The staff will have to really have some heart-to-heart conversations on, are we going to reinvest in the dance program, or is it better to direct our programmatic efforts to other opportunities, perhaps some that were expressed as interests and desires in the community needs survey, for example. So that would be the first area to really consider what that programmatic future will look like. The second one is outlined in number 5 here, that we suggest that you really take some time looking at the future of fitness programming. Fitness and wellness scored very high as far as the needs assessment was concerned, that a high need for fitness and wellness programs was expressed by your community. And so the staff will need to take some time to determine, what does that mean for what we're providing? Is it more classes? Is it more specific types of classes? What does those look like? And actually, this has to happen in tandem with what kind of facility space physically do we have to be able to hold those classes in. Number 7 speaks to the desire for more special events, and your community loves them. Your staff has been fantastic in delivering some really great events. The point that we want to make sure is very clear here is that if there is expansion of more special events, subsequent personnel resources would really need to be added to be able to make those events successful. And finally, there were some unmet needs expressed in the community needs survey that were identified as a part of the analysis of that data that came back. And one of those areas is some additional special needs programming, or therapeutic recreation, as it's also known, for folks that have special needs or the need for accommodation to be able to participate in programs. Nature programs was also higher on the list, as were others. So we've listed here 2 for you. That is the programmatic recommendation list in short, just with some specific highlights. And so we wanted to offer an opportunity for you to, again, discuss or ask questions about programs and services and the future of those over the next few years.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the council or Parks Board members? Okay, I don't see any. Is this the end of this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so next we will have Mike Mowry present the final Imagine Shawnee strategic vision. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for being here, and really enjoyed, Barbara, your presentation, and congratulate you and the Parks Board and everyone that's worked on that process. It's been amazing to see, and I think it does fit in really well with what the council and the steering committee and the community has spoken about Imagine Shawnee, because obviously the future of Shawnee is going to include a great Parks and Rec programming, as well as just outdoor facilities and spaces. So really appreciate that. Council, I've enjoyed working with you. This will be nothing new to you because you saw this and of course spoke about it last week, but I want to go over it with you, and then at the end I'll take some questions. So thank you, Stephen, too, for your just gracious work and getting us through the technical duties. Man, that is the difficulties. That is one of the real test of leadership, and I just really admire your capacity to be patient and work through it. So I want to acknowledge that and honor that. Well, let's talk about these 5 pillars that we have gone. You've seen the cycle of strategic visioning. I don't really want to spend a lot of time with that, except to say that we will move, pending your vote to approve this, to the next phase, which will really be the staff planning it and work creating the plan. And we've said again and again that a vision is about direction. It's about where you are going. And a plan is about how. It's how you get there. You have completed largely the work of the vision, and now the staff will sort of take center stage in developing the plan, but always in connection with you. And as I think Eric said, in connection with the community so that we're getting community input all the way through. But let's look at what those pillars are, because the vision really determines what the plan will be. And I love how you've worked on this and hopefully really feel like you've come to own it. We sometimes say that no person is more apathetic than the one in pursuit of another person's agenda. And one of my big goals in this process is to make sure that this vision is owned by you as the council. Because if it's just something that came from the community, but you didn't really embrace it, you won't be passionate about it. If it just came from SGR, that's even worse. But I think this really is a vision that has been developed by you because of the input that you've received from your residents. 5 pillars, not in any order other than alphabetical order, because they all demonstrate that together they uphold the vision. And without any of these, the vision begins to fall apart. So first, attract diverse housing to meet the needs of a growing city. 2, create a safe, sustainable, inclusive, and interactive community. 3, design an environment where businesses thrive. 4, lead in maximizing and integrating natural resources. And finally, provide exceptional city services and infrastructure. And I think what we've seen in cities that have been very successful is that they have a long walk in the same direction. They identify what's sort of out there on the horizon that they all agree that they want to work toward. And these things help dictate the direction and decisions you make. So I think these are very good pillars. We've worked on them a lot. You've given great input. And now we want to look at the milestones under each of those pillars. And milestones simply tell us we're moving in the right direction at the right speed to see the vision fulfilled. And they give staff direction as they begin to plan initiatives and action plans that are in alignment with the pillar and the milestones. So we have 4 on the first one. Develop a mix of housing options to serve a broad range of households and income levels. Be innovative in mixed-use developments. Revitalize needed areas with infill housing developments, and integrate multifamily housing into existing development. So those are the 4 milestones for that pillar. Let's look at the second one. We did a little more work on this one at the last meeting, and you'll see that a few things have been added to reflect that. So the pillar is create a safe, sustainable, inclusive, and interactive community. And the milestones, a little more descriptive than the previous one: continue to be a leader in public safety best practices, promote health, connectedness, and a sense of belonging in every neighborhood, maintain a hometown feel, develop creative partnerships to expand public transit opportunities, make downtown a premier, interactive, and unique destination, integrate sustainability and conservation in planning to create a resilient city and improve quality of life, generate opportunities for recreation, public art, history, and cultural experiences. And then another one that was added following the discussion, or as a part of the discussion from last time: honor Shawnee's history as we move into the future. So that's the second pillar and its milestones. Let's look at the third one: design an environment where businesses thrive. And I love the work you guys did on this one. It's such an integral part of this future vision. Identify areas that would be attractive to and create plans for commercial development. Attract and retain business clusters that will create a sustainable business culture. Number 3, recruit businesses that will make downtown a premier destination, create a corporate business park to attract additional Fortune 100 companies, and then finally for this one, and of course, like many other of the milestones, this ties back into the presentation from the Parks Board, encourage parks and recreational opportunities within commercial development. And then the fourth pillar has to do with the natural resources and is certainly one of the key differentiators for the city of Shawnee and its future. You have such a beautiful city right now, and one of the milestones for that is to capitalize on Shawnee's unique topography and geography by integrating it into developments and site designs. And I think that's such an important one. Promote innovation and efficiency in design standards as updates are made to the comprehensive plan. Incorporate natural resource access into development. And then finally, utilize the Kansas River in future recreational opportunities. And then the last pillar has to do with city services. Provide exceptional city services and infrastructure. And the milestones under this one: support residents in maintaining property through safe building codes that promote new construction and renovation. Promote beautification by establishing innovative code enforcement strategies. 3, provide state-of-the-art stormwater systems through regional partnerships that protect residents' properties. 4, create a continuity of regional connections through sidewalks, paths, and trails. Grow and cultivate a workforce of servant leaders who are fully equipped and prepared to carry out the vision of Shawnee. Maintain and expand a quality road system utilizing concepts that promote efficiency and sustainability. And finally, establish an infrastructure development plan. So those were the pillars. Now, we also talked last time, and there's been a few updates to this because of the discussion, about moonshot ideas or possible moonshot ideas. And I actually really like the way this worked out, because I think what you've done is you've established the sort of the basics and the fundamentals and some really good things that are going to guide your vision, but you've also been able to acknowledge, okay, here are some things that some may develop legs that really find their way into the actual strategic vision, but others may sit for a while because the technology is not developed yet to make it happen. But we haven't lost any ideas. Valley of Champions sports development, campground incorporated into the Valley of Champions, tiny home village, short-term rentals, nature center, attracting a Fortune 100 company headquarters, adventure park, amphitheater, downtown power and light gathering place. I think this next one has a lot of excitement. Partner with a research university to develop a bioscience animal health incubator. Pedestrian connections across I-435 and K7. Some really neat ideas on mixed use residential communities, community recreation and gathering space, senior center, farmer and craft market, and then incorporate recreation and entertainment opportunities near the Kansas River. Rebrand the I-435 corridor as the gateway to Johnson County. And then of course, capitalize the proximity to the airport, MCI. So those are the moonshot ideas. And like I say, I don't think there's anything new for you, council, here, because all of these things reflect the discussion from last time. But I want to open it up for any discussion or questions that you might have before I turn it back over to the mayor.
The only thing I would say, Mike, is that they agreed to remove the power and light reference. They weren't going to call it that since that name already belongs to somebody else.
To somebody else. Okay. My apologies for that. So it should just say on the moonshot ideas there, downtown, create a unique downtown gathering place.
Yeah. Everything else looks like it got captured but that one. So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
And then does anyone on the council or advisory board have any questions or comments? I am not seeing any, Mike. Oh, wait, Councilmember Thomas.
Sorry about that. I really like what has happened here. It's been a tremendous amount of work and input and really great exchanges of ideas. I would really like even though this has been ongoing for some time, considering the situation that we're in with COVID and we're having Zoom meetings and challenges and all of these things, families are disrupted. I would really like to see this posted on our website for public review prior to a vote. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you. Yes, that's actually the plan. That was going to comment on that even though residents started the process and like I said, staff worked so hard gathering all the information from the residents. So this whole visioneering session, visioneering plan started with the residents and then, like I said, came before us as a governing body and went back to the residents, and it's gone back and forth several times, but it's all originated from the residents. But so my thoughts were, since we are recording this Zoom meeting, is that we will push this out in all of our avenues and allow the one final time for, well, no, I shouldn't say final time because this is an ongoing process, just as like in our last meeting we talked about, this is a living, breathing document. So it's never going to be quote unquote final, but in order to approve this and move it forward of our current vision, to put that link out there in all of our different resources and then bring it back for the vote on the May 26th agenda. And then that gives residents almost a month to be able to provide comments to the governing body on this, quote, like I said, I don't want to call it final, but this the current vision that we're approving to go forward. Councilmember Jenkins.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm just happy to hear you say that because I concur with Tammy 100% that we need to execute that, just that final step, kind of like I talked about with the master plan for the parks. We've done a lot of great work. Mike, you've done a good job, especially some of the changes you've made based upon the suggestions we've had. Looks like you captured them all, so you did a great job. Staff's done a great job. Everybody's done great. Now we just need to do that last step in the process and take it back to our community one more time so the citizens can see it. So before we vote on it, I'd like to do that at a public hearing or public meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? I don't see any, Mike.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. And I do want to add, as Councilman Jenkins said, and others, the staff's just been great to work with. Can't say enough about them and about your input too on it, Council. You have really worked hard and worked together, and I really commend you and glad to have been a part of it so far and look forward to the next phase of this.
Yes, thank you. I think the council and staff should be incredibly proud of themselves. So we probably should, though, go ahead and turn it over to Peter Jarko to conduct the vote of his board. And then we will wait on the governing body's approval until the meeting on the 26th. So Peter, would you like to do that?
Sure. I will accept the motion for the Park and Recreation Advisory Board to adopt the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Do I have, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And thank you. A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. No opposed. All in favor, motion passes.
Thank you. And could who made the motion and second please identify themselves for the record? If you're talking, you're muted. I can't hear you.
This is Rebecca. I seconded.
Thank you. Can we get who made the motion?
That was me, Mayor Brian.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so since there are no other items, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn, this is Eric.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned, and the regularly scheduled council committee meeting will begin shortly at 7 p.m. Thank you.